Welcome.
Good to be here.
So, this is the very first episode of what we're calling Shock the Startup, starting with the best of the best. This is Jacob Aldridge. Jacob, you're the Director of Advisory at Business Depot, where you lead a team that helps provide, and this is lifted straight from your website, financial and strategic solutions to businesses and their owners. Jacob, tell us a bit more about Business Depot and what you do at Business Depot.
So Business Depot broadly is the one place where a business owner can go and be heard. Because small to medium private enterprise is the beating heart of the Australian economy. It's got the jobs, it's got the passion, it's got the love, and when you're running a business, it is incredibly bloody lonely. And so knowing that you need some support, whatever that might be, and then having a place where you can go and find that out. And that's what we're aiming to do. It's definitely aspiration. We're only a 4-year-old company. That aspiration is that, if we can't help you ourselves, we know the people who can. And so building that collaborative approach to business is a core part of who we are and what we do. I head up the advisory, international business coach. So I get the fun and the privilege to a degree of going into businesses and going into great businesses and having a chat with the business owner and peeling off the mask and seeing what's really going on and then going, okay, how can I help? What can we do?
Awesome. So at Business Depot, you're kind of like a one-stop shop for businesses, really. Is that sort of the...
Yeah, without we've got an accounting business, legal business, marketing, business broking, business coaching and advisory, in-house. Mm-hmm. Everything we do is about going, well, this is my area of expertise. And these are the people that I know and trust who have other areas of expertise. Yeah. So I may be able to help you, or maybe I can't help you, but I can point you in the direction of somebody who can.
Awesome. So you're also, as you mentioned, you're also a business coach and a founder. You've recently co-founded a company called Real Reach. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about Real Reach?
Real Reach, sure. So it's hopefully the first of many in an online space. So Real Reach is Australia and New Zealand's first online coaching and training platform dedicated solely to real estate principles. So that's an industry and a niche that my team's got some experience in. We've partnered up with others in that space to go similarly. Where are the experts who know those parts of running a real estate business, and how do we get them to share their expertise so that those small business owners, which is what a real estate principle is, have got a place to go at a time that suits them, because the reality is that's 10 a.m. on a Saturday night, not 9 a.m. on a Monday morning when they've got clients to deal with. And they can go, how do I learn about branding? How do I learn about strategy? How do I learn about communication, coaching my team, those kind of things.
Awesome. And how's it going?
It's it's not yet met targets.
Okay.
It's very much an interesting example of there's a gap in the market. Mm-hmm. How much of a market is there in the gap? And that's why I say it's the first of many. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty open about the fact that we haven't necessarily practiced everything that I'd preach to somebody who wanted to start that. Yeah. We've learned an awful lot. The members we've got are loving it, getting enormous value. We haven't yet got that sustainable sales marketing engine flowing where I can reliably go, we're going to get 3 or 5 new members every week. Okay. The ones who jump on board, they think I'm a genius, and that's the most important thing.
It is. Yes, fake it till you make it. So the idea of this series, that we hope it turns into a series, we'll see the success of this one to determine that.
No pressure.
Yeah, the idea of this series is, as a web development company, digital marketing agency that we are, we get a lot of people who come to us so far, as we say in the biz, up channel. Mm-hmm. They come to us with an idea. They want to change the world. They want to create the next great unicorn. And then me being the strategist here, I get inundated with questions that are so far out of my wheelhouse that I should just zip my lip and just never bother answering. So this is in part to get insights from people such as you who have a lot more to offer for our clients, but also to educate myself so that when I do get asked those questions that I can actually answer them more effectively.
Sure.
So today we're going to try to keep on a certain topic, but you're so versatile and I'm also a bit of a bit of a shit talker, for lack of a better
Well,
word.
and you got to be when you're talking about early stage businesses. They don't need specialists.
Yes.
You need generalists. You
Yeah.
need someone who can maybe simplify some things that are more complex than it sounds. But you got to have someone who can have that chat.
Yes. So what we're going to try to stay sort of narrowed around is the idea of managing a startup.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual day-to-day management of the startup. So we're going to try to get some advice for budding founders on all that really glamorous and sexy stuff. Tax, strategy, marketing, legals, things like that. Maybe we'll just gloss over that and talk about more cool stuff. We'll see how it goes. So the first question, you've obviously got a wealth of experience working with and on startups. Tell us what you feel are the weaknesses that you see most often in the startups that you encounter. And similarly, what are the things that you see startup founders overlook or ignore most often that end up causing issues?
And 4 hours later, we'll have answered the first question. Good question. What do I see as being the most common mistake? It's creating a business in a basement. It's building a solution in search of a problem. And what I mean by that is, an awful lot, and I'm similar, I get a lot of people, and I've always got time, come on into my office in the Valley and grab a coffee, and they pitch me, and I'm hesitant to say sometimes, I'd almost call it a business idea, but there's no idea there, and there's really no business in there. It's just, in isolation, the founder, or even a group of mates, and it's not just a tech startup thing, it's any new business. I see a lot who kind of go, this would be cool to build, not this is a cool problem to solve, not this is a cool market to work with, not there's all these people who have this pain and I think I can help them. Mm-hmm. It's, I really want to go and build another to-do list app.
Okay.
And they end up investing an awful lot of time, maybe some money, resources, they build whatever it is that they think is fantastic, but at no point have they actually gone and talked to the market. Yep. They've never actually sat down with someone and gone, what's your pain and how do I help fix it? And then they launch this thing to the world with great fanfare and it lands with a thud and they don't understand why. And there's a reason, I say the number one priority of a startup business is the product market fit. That's something you'll see a lot in research and literature. And some people are great at building products, but unless you've got a market that wants to buy it, you're not going to succeed in business.
When we spoke on the phone, you answered another question, and I think it's probably a similar sort of topic, was what you said about you should probably try to be innovating from within your own industry when you're coming up with ideas and things like that. Because the question that I asked Jacob was, what is an industry that's ripe for disruption? And I think that's a question that a lot of people who are, watching Shark Tank and things like that, they're thinking, what can I do? Do you want to sort of go into some detail around what you said around that? Was you mentioned that you think that it's more important that they're inside the business. Why is that?
Yeah, the industry that is most ripe for you to disrupt is your industry, because you understand the market, you understand the way people talk, you understand the specific pain points that they've got. And you can watch Shark Tank, you can look at any industry from the outside and go, wow, that's ridiculous, how antiquated, I can't believe that they're doing things that way, they clearly need me to come in and fix that. But unless you actually know that industry, you don't understand why they do it the way they do it. And healthcare is an example, especially in the US where it's so bloated and fundamentally, can I say fucked up? Yeah. Fundamentally fucked up. It's so ripe for disruption and innovation, but you've got 60, 70 years of legacy decisions that have created that healthcare system. It's not two guys sitting in a back office going, we don't know what we're doing, let's just build this bloated software. And that's the case in any industry. They do things a certain way, and if you want to sell into that industry, you've got to understand why they do it so you can convince them to do something differently.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that when we get people coming to us, it's very rare that they're actually coming from inside an industry. A lot of the time they'll be coming from something that's like slightly related. With the like amount of experience that you've had dealing with this, do you think that that's okay, or is it really that they should be very focused on exactly what they're trying to solve?
You've got to go and talk to the audience. And that's why I joke about building the product in a basement, completely isolated from everyone else except for your friends on Fortnite. Like, unless you're going and having a chat with the people who are potentially going to buy, you don't really know. And, probably number one value bomb I can drop, shock the startup. There's a lot of people who want to start a business. They don't even necessarily care what kind of business. They just want to run their own business. They want more money, more time, less stress, whatever it is. And most of the time they're sitting there going, oh, what's the idea? Can I come up with an idea? They sit there, focus on the idea, on the product. Much better, much more chance of success. Don't focus on what you're going to build. Focus on who you're going to build it for. And go and chat with them. And it doesn't matter what industry. You jump into LinkedIn, Google, find some leaders in that industry, call them up and go, I want to understand how digital software is working. I want to understand how healthcare works. I want to understand about accounting or business or insurance, whatever it is. Can I buy you a coffee and just learn a little from your experience? And these leaders say yes. They love the opportunity to share. You do it. This is what you're saying. You love having these conversations. And so if you want to start a business and you don't know what industry even, go and talk to people. Understand what their life is. Understand what hurts them in their life, particularly in business, because there's more money in business. But if you want to have a consumer product, what's driving people mad in their life? And part of the reason why we end up with 1 million to-do list apps in the tech space is that there's this philosophy of scratch your own itch, which is kind of fine. But if you're a 22-year-old tech nerd,
haven't been around the traps enough.
Yeah, like your life is. It reminds me. There's a great Eddie Murphy skit in Raw or Delirious. One of those great, and that's value bomb number 2. If you haven't sat down and watched Raw with Eddie Murphy, go and do it.
Showing your age.
Yeah, I am. Gen X for the win. But he talks about his first stand-up. He was like 15 or 16 when he first did stand-up. And he said, I had no life experience. I had nothing to talk about. And that was stand-up in the 80s, was very much that observational style was coming in. And he said, so I got up and I did a whole skit about, taking a shit. Because that was all I knew. I didn't have a girlfriend. I'd never been laid. I didn't know business. I didn't know work. I didn't know jobs or taxes or any of these things. I just knew that, poo was funny. And so I tried to do a skit about that. And that's where you get a lot of young guys who focus on the idea. They go, what causes me pain? And they end up creating something that ultimately only services other young tech people who could fix the problem themselves and therefore are never going to pay for it. Much harder to actually go and talk to business leaders, people in industry, people who are doing real things day to day, running teams, having problems. If you can go and talk to them, and they will talk to you, and understand what's going on for them, and then it may take time. You start to go, hang on.
It should take time, shouldn't it?
Well, it sometimes, lightning will strike and you might find something unexpected. But it's even if you get a brilliant idea in the first meeting, you want to go and have the second and third and make sure it wasn't just that one guy who might be interested. All of a sudden you'll go, wow, and nobody is fixing that because no one else is talking to them. No one within the industry can see the opportunity, and no one from outside the industry is bothering to talk to them because they're all sitting in a basement trying to come up with an idea.
Absolutely. That's really good insight. So would you say that really good implementation can overcome a bad idea, or like where do you stand on the idea versus implementation thing? So
ideas are worthless.
Okay.
Implementation is priceless.
Okay, well, I'm no longer an ideation expert, in case you're wondering.
And the way I break it down to three levels. It's kind of inspiration, strategy, execution. And a lot of us have inspiration. Inspiration is, it doesn't last. And the problem with a lot of people in business, and this is whether it's your whole business or just, hey, I want to do a Facebook page, you go from inspiration into execution. You don't take time to do the strategy and you half-ass it. And then you kind of go, well, that didn't work, and there's the next bit of inspiration kind of pops up. And so people bounce around a whole lot of different ideas in their business, taking the time to actually map out from a strategy level, okay, well, how do we take that idea? How do we validate it? How do we make sure it's actually a good idea? And then if we're going to fully implement it, what's the plan? How do we actually do that? Because I even see great businesses that I go into, established organisations, that kind of get halfway through implementation and kind of go, well, enough. Like we're bored now, or that was more than we expected, and they don't fully realise the value of the idea that they've got.
So you are talking about strategy and tactics there. I wrote an article on LinkedIn about strategy because I saw somebody quote the founder of American Airlines, I think it was, or some big airline company, who basically was talking about strategy being worthless. Who needs strategy when you can just do stuff?
Yeah. Oh, it's agile.
So well, firstly, I think a lot of people out there actually don't really know what us types mean when we say strategy. It just sounds like big words that we use to make ourselves sound cool. So as it pertains to managing a business, what is strategy and why is it important?
And I think there's two different contexts, which is where some of the confusion comes from. So managing a business, and most of the businesses I work into have got a team. And so strategy takes on a whole other level of importance, which is, and my definition, strategy is the documented process to take you from where you are now to where you want to be. It tells you how to get there, and it explains why. So underpinned by the commercial reality and driven by purpose. And if you Google what is business strategy, you find 4,000 words of me saying exactly just that. The reason that
there's so many different people saying different things. There's so many different schools of thought on strategy.
The reason it's critical, and this is even for an idea. So it might be an idea for a product, it might be an idea for a business, it might be your whole business plan. My business plan sits on the back of a beer coaster. It's not a big thing, but it's bloody well thought out. It might just be, okay, we want to set up a Facebook page, whatever it might be. The reason you need strategy is twofold. One, our brains do a wonderful thing of connecting dots that have no right to be connected. Things make incredible sense in our head. And how many times have you sat with someone going, have you got a strategy? And they go, yeah, it's in my head.
Yep.
And the brain will, because our brain wants to be right. Our brain wants us to be smart. And so if our brain realizes that we're doing something stupid, its response is not tell him he's doing something stupid. The response is paper over the cracks.
If you have that in your brain, then you're probably going to be successful that way. If you have some internal dialogue that's actually, a little bit disrespectful to you,
so
don't hose it down.
Getting a strategy written down. This is what we're going to do, and that's all it is. This is what we're going to do. That's what strategy is. Get that written down because you will expose the gaps in your brain. Because you start writing it out and go, hang on, that doesn't make sense. And you will then have something you can actually communicate.
Yes.
So I can go, hey Joe, go and build this. Not, I've got this thing in my head, go and build it. And that's where so many business leaders fall apart and get frustrated with their team, is they've actually just done a really shithouse job of communicating what they want the team to actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that's an issue we face all the time being an agency. It's the same as briefing. The better the brief, the better the outcome.
Yeah, and people want to rush that. In agency or anything, it's like, can't you just go and build it?
Yeah.
And it's like, but every hour we skip in the briefing process is probably a day in execution where you go, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a different orange. Can you make the logo bigger?
It's so much easier. Have you heard that song? Do you know that song?
No.
It's old. You've not heard that song?
No.
I'll show you that song. It's a song. Yeah, no, it's a good point. That it's so much easier to sort of modify things when they're in the strategy or the scoping stage than 3/4 of the way through actual development, or in the case of running a business, actually marketing.
And do you get that? Do you get people who've kind of started to build something and then realized it's not working, and they kind of come to you with this ugly baby and try and get you to
well, I mean, when we were in our infancy as a business, we're seeing people coming to us and they've got their briefcases full of money. Nobody has ever paid in a briefcase, but please do one day, because I'd like to experience that. But they come to you and you're like, okay, yeah, well, we can help you. But you have that experience that never works when they come to you with a half-built product, especially when it's something that's blue water concept. When they don't know, it's not market tested, basically you're taking on the risk of failure. Then if you take it on and it's not worked at that point, and it's gonna be another 6 months worth of development to complete, and then it doesn't work well. And that ends up being something that you don't really want to have to go through. So I can sympathise with that. Those were a little bit of I guess the sexiest stuff that we're going to talk about. Okay, next question is, tell us 3 things, and I love these like listicle things. 3 things you tell every person thinking about founding a startup. First one is, don't do it, right?
Well, and to a degree, it almost is. There's the tradition in the Jewish faith, for example, that if you want to convert and you go, and I'm not Jewish, so I'm basing this entirely on Charlotte's experience in Sex and the City, when she marries Harry in like season 5, where they deny you because they want to make it hard. They want to make sure you're serious. Yep. And so if people come and say, I want to start a business, and you go, no, you don't. And they go, oh, maybe I don't. It's like, yeah, you probably don't have it. Because the number one thing I say is, it is such an emotional journey. And it's the best. I'm not a father. God willing, at some point I will be, so I can say this without insulting any children. It's the greatest experience emotionally of your life. The highs, the lows, the roller coaster of running your own business is unlike anything else. If you're not ready for that, if you're not prepared for that, it will chew you up, spit you out, and you'll be exhausted. Yep. Yeah. So number one thing is understand the emotion. And in startup, I break business into 4 key stages that are all based on emotions and feelings. Startup is that initial excitement, that fundamental overwhelm, freneticness. There's a million things I've got to do. There's never enough hours in the day. Is this going to work? And when that initial self-motivation starts to exhaust itself, which is usually 18 months to 3 years in, if you don't have the revenue flowing, if you haven't proved the business model yet, then the emotions start to drop, the energy really plummets. You start to go through anxiety and the trough of sorrow that they talk about in a lot of tech startup circles, where you've got this baby that you love with a passion. Your team are so behind. Maybe you've got investors, so you've got all of that additional pressure, and it's just not making any money. And every single day you've got to wake up and go, I'm going back in there. Is this going to work or is this not going to work? And you can get through that and get the confidence and shift from startup to scale up. Absolutely phenomenal experience. Do it anyway, and understand that if a business fails, that's the business, not you. Yeah. But be ready for the emotional journey. That's a really long point 1 on a listicle. I've talked about the product market fit, get to know the audience, get the business model working, just understand, if I get a client, what is the process that goes through, and can I prove that if I put $1 into this business at the start of the month, I can get $1.05 out of the bottom, or $1.01, or 95 cents, but you can prove that it's kind of going to keep working. And then once you've got that, how do you keep putting more people through it? What's the sales and marketing engine that you can do?
Customer experience. Yeah. The guys downstairs outfit, actually, they sort of got off the ground because they had one real flagship customer in the first place. Nice. In fact, they built the platform from a brief from that company, and then that company became their first and largest client. Is that something that you see that commonly happens in startup land, like especially with B2B startups?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't necessarily say it's common, but it does happen, and it's a wonderful opportunity. Like further down the track, you've got risks, because suddenly 80% of your business is this one client. And if you're looking for business valuation and those kind of things, that will deflate the value because you're so exposed to that one client. But it's that market fit. Here is a business that needs something they can't find anywhere else, and they will actually pay us to build the product. How good is this? And then we own the product, and so we can go and sell it to all of their competitors, or internationally, or leverage it into other industries. So you're essentially getting paid for market research, paid for product development.
Yeah. I feel like if I was going to try to found a startup, I'd try to emulate that to some degree. Sort of insulates you from a bit of the risk. All right, so this is a Brisbane-centric question. You'll remember that I asked you this one on the phone.
Yeah.
Recent reports say that Brisbane has surpassed Melbourne to become Australia's number 2 city when it comes to the volume of startup companies. That's volume of startup companies.
Nice.
This is an amazing result, obviously, when you consider the size of a place like Melbourne and the reputation.
Yeah.
Melbourne's like it's been the most livable city in the world for however many years until this year. What do you think is the reason for it?
I think it's a couple of factors. And I think one of the big things that drives startup hubs in general is cash, is funding, and is that ecosystem. The reason Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley it comes from the silicon. It comes from some of those early stage transistor companies that got big, got an exit, and suddenly there's all of this cash in the pockets of all of these geeks who go, where can I invest that in other cool shit? And you create this community. And so that's what drove Silicon Valley. And I think Brisbane's starting to get there. We haven't necessarily had 2 or 3 big exits that have got the startup system here flush with cash. But you look at things like River City Labs and the whole community built around that, and that's just one of the conversations. You've got some of this cycle of funding and support going on, which is critical. The other thing, and it reminds me of when I was working in London, coaching businesses over there, and they were looking to set up, they call it Silicon Roundabout, because they liked calling it Silicon because they're a government, and they thought, well, let's just replicate Silicon Valley. We don't have a valley, but we've got a big roundabout. The roundabout they had was the Old Street Roundabout. So getting to Hackney and Shoreditch and some really poor areas where my family came from 200 years ago. And that's the other part about startups, is that some of the best startups are young people, men and women, it's not just young guys. They are completely broke. Their desire is to become ramen profitable so that they can afford, the Maggi 2-minute noodles, not the home brand. There's 12 of them living in an apartment, coding 20 hours a day. Melbourne over the last few years has had a real estate boom, which has priced a lot of that demographic out of the market. Okay. Brisbane has not. So it is so much cheaper to live in Brisbane when you've got that cool ecosystem to come and hang with. And, I don't know when people are watching this, we're sitting here, it's early spring, it's 23 degrees outside, there is not a cloud in the sky, it is gorgeous, sensational weather. So if you are completely broke, you can get a cheap share room, you can get a cheap co-working space, or just go and hang with other cool people in various offices around here who are doing cool stuff, who are creating cool things. Yeah, just look like you're part of it. Yeah. On a weekend you go down to South Bank and it's always gorgeous. You compare that to Melbourne, and Melbourne has great coffee. Brisbane, I think, has almost caught up with the foodie scene. But, if the weather's great in Melbourne, give it 15 minutes and it'll be terrible again. A Melbourne winter is dismal. And when you're sitting there in a shitty share house with cracked windows and no insulation, and you're paying $400 a week in Melbourne, why would you not take your business, which is essentially just your laptop, and move to Brisbane? So, Melbourne livable for all of these trendy things, but the livability score is going, how much opera is there? If you're a startup founder, you want to go, cool people, cheap living, how do I actually get this thing off the ground? And Brisbane, I think, offers that more than any other city in Australia, because even Sydney, where the number one volume is, that's just got a heap of people who are stuck. I think if I was living in Sydney, I'd be moving to Brisbane as well.
Okay. Do you think that it has to do with the fact that Brisbane's kind of, a little bit further away, so we have a lot more regional areas surrounding Brisbane, the northern part of New South Wales, all of regional Queensland, if they need to come to somewhere that has the infrastructure to run a business, it's just the closest?
Well, I think, that's a really great point, that if you're sitting in Tamworth or Tweed Heads or Mackay, Gladstone, whatever, and you're going to move somewhere. The reality is, I don't want to pick on Tamworth, it's a wonderful regional city, probably doesn't have a huge startup scene.
Maybe we can disrupt the Golden Guitar Awards. Is there a startup idea in country music?
I like both kinds of music, country and western. You're going to move somewhere. You're going to be driven to move somewhere. And if your choices are Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane, and you're looking at, the moths in your wallet, and you're kind of going, where is it going to be fun to live, cost efficient to live, and it has this tech vibe or this startup business support.
There's news articles saying that it's the second biggest.
There's this Shock the Startup podcast that's saying that, this is absolutely the place to go. I think, because, there are regional centres. If you're in Ballarat or you're on the Central Coast, it might feel easier to go to Melbourne or Sydney. The reality is, and I've moved around the world, I travel a lot, going from Ballarat to Melbourne is just as hard as going to Ballarat to Brisbane.
All right, so tell us a few startups that you deal with that are doing exciting things that you'd like to plug?
Plug some cool startups here in Brisbane. I mean, you get some bigger companies that are launching. There's a lot of particularly B2B businesses don't tend to necessarily get all of the profile. So I'll go you one better actually, and I'll mention a couple, but there's something coming up that I think is going to be a fantastic way for people who want to know the answer to that question to actually come and find out. So November this year, there's a big event not far from where we're shooting this called Something Digital, which is like they've got international speakers flying in to talk about digital, and they've got a whole lot of local businesses showcasing, and they're doing something which I think is really freaking cool, which is they're actually having almost a business open home as part of the conference, where you get all of these digital businesses, normal businesses doing cool stuff with digital in Brisbane, to open their doors and welcome you in to go, this is what we're doing, and really share and collaborate. And so
Something Digital.
Something Digital.
When's that?
I think it's the 1st and 2nd of November.
Google it.
Google it. Something Digital.
I wonder if Google would be able to actually. Be a hard one. Something Google Festival, something like that. Sorry, I'm a search guy.
Search,
I have to think about these things.
Yeah, how do you get the URLs in there? I started a business once, which I ended up kind of rolling into real reach, but it was called Real Estate Grow. And I pitched that to the industry, and they went, it's a terrible name. And I pitched it to a marketing guy, and he went, you created that with search engine optimization in mind. It was like, grow my rent roll, grow my sales rate, grow my revenue, that kind of stuff. So yeah, Something Digital, I think, is the big answer to that. A couple of cool companies I think probably deserve a plug. A lot of data, cool stuff happening with data in a B2B space. So Data Sites, great young company, SMEs, who've got a heap of data out of Xero or their CRM or spreadsheets. Kev and his team at Data Sites can go in and get it talking together, create the dashboards, give you the useful information that you need, which a lot of businesses are falling down on. Okay. And another one doing a similar kind of thing but at an enterprise scale is Icara Group. And they go into the big corporates, the companies with the names on the buildings, because these companies, they've got 40, 50 different tech stack intertwining. They've all got service level agreements. They've got these SLAs that say if we don't perform, we owe you all this money. But something goes down and they just point the finger at each other. Icara come in and give you the box to piece it together, and you can turn around and go, okay, Telstra, that's your problem, or okay, software, whatever it is, this is your problem. So definitely check those out. And there's one that's a cool little company that I think is going to do pretty awesome things outside of tech completely. Mm-hmm. Fin Biogas. Okay. So
that's three real startup-y little suffixes, isn't it? Fin
Biogas. It's named after an 8-year-old German kid.
Okay.
Yeah. And Jason, who owns and runs Fin Biogas, so they're turning waste into energy.
Oh wow!
And they've actually built these plants. There's a lot of people who are toying around in that area because it's one of those sustainable. It's not quite as efficient as wind or solar, so it doesn't have the big bucks behind it.
Are you telling me that they're creating a flux capacitor?
I am. If you've seen Back to the Future 2, where they go into the future and the dock, they're doing exactly that.
Gosh.
It's not quite as efficient as plutonium that you stole from the Libyans, but it is getting there. And he's doubled down and said, it's not necessarily maybe ever going to be as efficient as solar. However, it solves this extra problem, which is all of this waste. This food waste, oil waste, electric, to be able to feed that into a plant and have biofuels spit out the other end. And he's built this. He's built this overseas, and I think he's going to start popping up these plants all around Australia, and that's going to be pretty cool stuff all round. So you don't need to be a tech startup to change the world and do something cool.
Okay, so last question before we wrap this up.
Wow.
If you were at the phase where you had some market validation, you've got your idea, what sort of people should you be talking to to make sure that you've got all of your I's dotted and T's crossed. Like a lot of the people who come to us, they're asking things, and I'm turning around and going, "You should be talking to accountants or lawyers." Like, is that the reality, or?
Sadly, to a degree, the number one most valuable thing, if you can find it, is a good mentor.
Okay.
And that again is where that startup ecosystem that Brisbane has in place makes it so much easier, because it fast tracks so many of those mistakes that otherwise you'd have to learn yourself. And it's a lot of those kind of questions, because you can go to an accountant and they may start businesses, but very, very different businesses. And the number of clients I've gone into, once they've got 20, 30 staff, and even as a non-accountant, non-expert, I can kind of go that the structure of the business is great if you're a mum and dad business. You are never going to be a mum and dad business. You should not have had that structure. The accountant gave you that because that's what they do, because most of their clients are mum and dad businesses. So you've got to get the right accountant, get the right lawyer, and having a mentor can really help with that. Now, you want a mentor who actually is still connected with the ecosystem. It's not just someone who has built one business and did it successfully, and that was 10 or 20 years ago, because things are changing so much. Okay. But yeah, the two key relationships, any great startup, is a good mentor in the industry and a good solid accountant. If you need legal, digital, all of those things will follow. I get a lot of people come to me as a business coach, really looking for that mentoring role. Yeah. And if they're funded, if they're fast growing, I can help them. And just being a cool dude, I love sitting down and pointing them in the right direction. The reality is most coaches, consultants are there to alleviate the friction in the management team. When you're very, very young and in startup, you don't have a management team. No. You don't have that friction.
You might not even have a team.
Yeah. So you don't need to be spending thousands of dollars on consulting. Yeah. When you get to a point where you're turning over a couple of $1 million, you can get a great return on that investment, but that's further down the track. Find that mentor, go and buy them a coffee or some lunch, and it'll be priceless.
So what makes a good mentor then? You mentioned what doesn't make a good mentor.
Yeah.
What makes a good one?
They've got to have their finger on the pulse still. They're not just resting on their laurels. If you hear the same story from them 3 times, then they're just kind of rehashing past glory. The fundamental thing, and if you Google business life cycle, you get a heap of different, and there's a lot of overlap, a lot of research. I like the way I break mine down, because it talks about feelings, and every business is run by people. People are driven by our emotions, and having that conversation, I think, is critical within business. The reason you want a mentor who understands the business life cycle is because they can tell you what's relevant now and which stuff you can ignore. You go to conferences, you listen to podcasts, you run the risk of copying the wrong homework, because the person they put up on stage, you go to something digital, they're going to have these great international speakers. I guarantee you those speakers are not going to get up and go, my business is currently in a world of hurt, we're completely staffed, I have no idea what I'm doing.
I wish people would be more honest about things like that.
Well, you kind of do, but you don't want to pay to go to a conference and just have people whinging and going, I don't know what to do with my business.
Maybe there's something.
I think
Have you actually been to a fuck up night?
No. But I like the idea, even just...
Yeah, so the Fuck Up Nights is it's a global movement.
Yeah.
And it's basically where founders go to just tell all their war stories and be real honest with each other. And it's usually held in a pretty grungy sort of dive, and you sit there and you're drinking and it's a really fun experience. I actually spoke at one. Not that I had too many fuck-ups.
See, but even how honest can I be? I didn't have too many fuck-ups.
Good point.
I think it'd be a good...
All right, I screw up all that.
Yeah. The day ending in Y. So most speakers at conferences, you pull me in to have this chat, we're in a scale-up phase of the business. Things are going well, we're feeling relaxed, things are growing. And so if you ask me what I'm doing in my business, I'd be able to rattle off some of the strategic priorities. If you're a startup business and you try and implement those scale-up priorities, it's the wrong approach. You're copying the wrong homework. And this is where I see a lot of startups kind of go, look, I just want to do 4-day weeks, or it's all about the ping pong table. And it's kind of like, well, that's the outcome, not the cause to a degree. It's not that suddenly the founder of those businesses, and to give another group a plug, Cluey and Crumo, who are in the Valley, a digital businesses here in Brisbane, and I saw Skulk Paneer, who's one of the founders there, talk about this. He's got better work-life rhythm now. It's not a balance, it's still the rhythm. He got to that point, and most people in an established business have got to that point by doing the ridiculous long hours, the hard yards, the fuck-ups. And so if you're a startup thinking that you can just skip the hard work and go to the relaxed phase, you're just going to fail in business. And so that's, I'm sure there was a question at some point about 15 minutes ago. The mentor question is having a mentor, having a mentor who can differentiate between that advice, who doesn't just say, look, when I sold my business for $10 million, $10 billion, whatever, we were doing X, Y, and Z, and therefore you should do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. They can sit there and go, when I started my business, this is what we needed to focus on. And we hacked a whole heap of stuff together, and we faked it until we made it. Yeah. And we did all of these things that didn't scale so that we could prove the business model, and then we could start fixing it.
So it's like somebody who you can learn from the mistakes of.
Yeah, and who will actually share the mistakes. Yeah, because if they're a genius, and they just want to project that veneer of being a genius, then there's not a lot you're going to be able to learn from them unless you're also a genius.
I feel like the sort of people who put themselves out there to be mentors to people are generally going to be pretty generous with the time.
Oh, absolutely.
The information that they share. So.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so this is Jacob Aldridge. Jacob, if we have any listeners or viewers, if you're watching this, who are interested in discussing advisory services with you, or are interested in your real estate leadership stuff, how can they get in touch with you? And do you have any special offers that they might be interested in?
I don't do special offers. I just give a whole heap of shit away. Yeah. Spread the love, and the universe is abundant. Yeah. You put the love out there, it comes back. The thing I do that most people love is a weekly web series called Blackboard Fridays. Yep. So if you head to blackboardfridays.com.au, Google that.
Put that link somewhere in the something, maybe here or here.
Marvellous. And we've got, that's free archive. It's a weekly video on a business topic each week. I think we're getting close to episode 100, so that's kind of pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked about that. As I say, I'm always happy to grab a coffee, especially if you want to come in and check out my office in the Valley. Always happy to grab a coffee, have a chat about your business. That's not a sales pitch. That's not a free coaching session. That's, hey, you're cool, I'm cool, let's have a chat and see if I can help, point you in the right direction. And every now and then, clients fall out of that and sit there and go, we're actually growing pretty fast, we're wondering what we need to do and how do we accelerate that. And then they can have a chat with me about, investing in me, my team, getting a commercial outcome and the stuff that I do to make a living to fund the free web series and having awesome chats with cool dudes like you.
Thanks so much for coming.
Absolute pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. So if anybody has any questions, shoot them through and we'll pass them on and we'll try to address them in the next episode. If you have any questions around any topics to do with startups, make sure that you send them to us. You can post them to me on LinkedIn. You can put them in the comments section, wherever the heck this podcast or video is hosted. We intend to put it everywhere, so it might come in a whole range of different formats. But the more questions that you can get in, the more rich of a piece of content that we can create for you for the next time. But in the meantime, thanks again so much for coming in, Jacob.